Morbid Facts, Part 134. In 1985, a 13-year-old Colombian girl named Omaira Sanchez was trapped up to her waist in volcanic mud flow. Knowing she would die, volunteers and rescuers did their best to comfort her. She died after 60 hours, and her photo became iconic. The deacon St. Lawrence was roasted alive on a giant grill during the persecution of Valerian in 258 AD. Despite the agony, he joked with his tormentors, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Today he's the patron saint of chefs, firefighters, and comedians. In Houston, Texas, a 19-year-old man named Rashad died while attempting to play Russian roulette in front of his friends. He apparently didn't know how the game worked since he tried to use a semi-automatic pistol instead of a revolver. In 1976, a Greek man named Stomatis Maridis was diagnosed with lung cancer and told that he had less than a year to live. But 10 years later, he returned to the doctors to tell them that he was still alive, only to find out that he had outlived all of them. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 102. Morbid Facts, Part 135. If you ever see a kangaroo standing in the water like this, you should get out of there immediately. He's likely waiting for a pursuer to join him in the water so that he can drown it. It was developed as a defense mechanism against dingoes, but has been performed on innocent household dogs. Here's a photo of anti-war demonstrators protesting outside the 1968 DNC in Chicago. Shirtless protester Frank Plata was later drafted by the U.S. Army and killed in the Vietnam War. A Florida man named Brian Dwayne Stewart told his new neighbors that he would kill them with kindness. He then tried to kill them with a machete that he apparently named Kindness. Last summer, an 88-year-old Frenchman caused an entire hospital to be evacuated for the strangest of reasons. He had a shell from World War I stuck inside of his anus, which was considered a bomb threat, and a defusing team was called in. They determined the shell was not at risk of exploding, and it was surgically removed by doctors. Morbid Facts, Part 136. Actor Mickey Rourke was a heartthrob of the 1980s until he quit his acting career to become a boxer. After multiple facial injuries and botched plastic surgeries, he now looks like he's wearing a mask of someone else's face. United Airlines has repeatedly killed more pets per year than any other airline by far. In 2004, a depressed teen from Manchester used several fake online personas to convince his best friend to murder him. After surviving the stabbing, he became the first person in UK history to be charged with inciting their own murder. When Japan executes criminals by hanging, 3 different buttons on the wall are pressed by 3 different people at the same time. This is so that none of them know who actually did the killing, since only one button is randomly programmed to open the trap door. In 2016, Mark Hamill paid a visit to a dying Star Wars fan in the hospital. He then proceeded to answer every question as Luke Skywalker, since the fan could no longer distinguish between reality and fiction. Morbid Facts, Part 137. This was the mugshot of Ohio grandma Charlene Thompson after she poured hot grease on a woman during an argument. The victim suffered severe burns to her back and arm after the two apparently didn't see eye to eye. Sloths only have enough energy for their weekly toilet trip to the jungle floor. So if their baby ever falls to the ground, they must choose to preserve their energy and leave it to be eaten. A horrific bungee cord accident caused this man's iris to completely collapse. This famous mummy found in Pompeii appeared to be satisfying himself during his final moments in 79 AD. In medieval Germany, a divorcing couple could legally settle their disputes with a marital duel. The man was given a weapon but had to fight out of a hole with one hand tied behind his back, while the woman could move freely with a rock-filled sack but had to wear a weighted suit. If the husband lost, he was beheaded, and if the wife lost, she was buried alive. Morbid Facts, Part 138. David Vedder, aka Bubble Boy, was born in 1971 with a severe immune disorder where he basically had no immune system at all, meaning even the most harmless germs could kill him. Because of this, he spent his entire life inside of a bubble and could receive air, water, and food only if it had been sterilized first. At age 12, David received a bone marrow transplant from his sister, the only treatment available that would potentially allow him outside of his bubble. But the marrow sadly contained traces of a dormant virus, and David passed away a few months later. Flash forward to 2001, they made a dark comedy movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal that was inspired by this true story of Bubble Boy. Juan Catalan was put on death row and spent 6 months in prison for the murder of a teenage girl. He was the prime suspect only until his lawyer came across some unused footage from Curb Your Enthusiasm. The footage miraculously proved that Catalan had been at a Dodgers game with his daughter at the time of the murder. Here are some morbid facts about North Korea. This photo shows American college student Ota Benga begging for mercy in front of a North Korean court in 2015. He'd been visiting the country as part of a guided tour group and tried stealing a propaganda poster that was intercepted by airport security. 6 years later, he returned to the US in a vegetative state and died soon afterwards when his parents requested his feeding tube to be removed. North Korean hospitals are so underfunded that many operations are performed without anesthesia or antibiotics. To make matters worse, the same needles are often used for different patients, so a lot of people exit the hospital in worse shape than when they entered. North Korean founder Kim Il-sung had a baseball-sized tumor on the back of his head that propaganda officials worked hard to hide. As a result, this is one of the only photos ever taken of the tumor. North Korea imposes a 3-generation punishment rule. This means that if one person commits a crime, their entire bloodline, including the grandparents, parents, and children, are all sent to prison. Morbid Facts, Part 340. In 1904, 21-year-old Ota Benga was abducted from a tribe in the Congo and transported to the Bronx Zoo, where he was put on display alongside monkeys. He was placed in a small cage with an orangutan as an apparent depiction of evolution. Ota was given a functional bow and arrow to enhance his primitive image and to protect himself from the ape if necessary. Since visitors were far more interested in Ota than the actual animals at the zoo, the exhibit was extremely popular and began shattering attendance records. The zoo started seeing an average attendance of over 200,000 people per month, most of whom headed straight to the primate house to catch a glimpse of Ota Benga. But by 1906, Ota was finally released from his torment thanks to mass public outcry from the black community. A few years later, he attempted to return to Africa, but his plans were thwarted by World War I. After struggling to assimilate into American society, Ota fell into a deep depression and tragically ended up taking his own life in 1916. These are some of the worst movie set disasters in history. David Holmes was Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double in the Harry Potter films until a freak accident abruptly ended his career. While filming for the Deathly Hallows, Holmes was thrown too hard against the wall and ended up breaking his neck, paralyzing him from the chest down. In the early 90s, Bruce Lee's son Brandon was making a name for himself until tragedy struck while he was filming for The Crow. A bullet was lodged in the barrel of a prop gun and ended up hitting Lee right in the chest, killing him at the young age of 28. While filming for the 1983 Twilight Zone movie, one scene called for an explosion to happen underneath a flying helicopter. But the explosion caused the helicopter to spin out of control, resulting in the death of star Vic Morrow and 2 young child actors. This led to Hollywood abandoning helicopter scenes for years until the prevalence of CGI.